So hello and welcome to this Carved in Blue Denim Think Tank webinar. My name is Michael Kininmonth and I will be your moderator today. As a point of note, we will be recording this webinar and it will be uploaded to our LENZ video channel on YouTube. So you can watch it later if you wish. Today's subject for the webinar is freelancers. So freelancer, entrepreneur, consultant, contractor, change agent, are these terms interchangeable? Does it even matter? I'm not sure really. I've spoken to all of the panelists today and consultant seems to be the job title most of them prefer. So why do consultants or freelancers exist? Well, I'm going to leave it to our guest today to tell you that. Suffice to say that as a consequence of globalization, there's been a shift from production-based to knowledge-based economies. Knowledge and expertise has gradually become the most critical organizational asset to sustain competitive advantage. So my simple answer to the question is that the main benefit that consultants exist is that they can provide you with temporary expertise. The number of UK freelancers has jumped from about 3.5 million at the turn of the century to 5 million today. That's just under 8% of the UK working population. It's estimated that the self-employed market contributes about 275 billion to the UK economy. 41 million Americans describe themselves as freelancers or consultants, and that's about 12.5% of the working population. And they are estimated to generate about $1.8 trillion of revenue for the US economy last year. So not an insubstantial part of the economy. Our panel that we've gathered together today brings over 150 years of knowledge and expertise in the denim industry. So now I'm going to introduce our panelists for today's webinar. We have Miles Johnson, Salli Deighton, Mohsin Sajid, Laura Dixon, Claire Ford, Sinem Celik, Michelle Brands, and Amy Roberton. So I'm going to ask each panelist now to ask them where they're based, which areas are their expertise, countries where they've worked, and why they became a consultant. So let's start with Miles.
Starting with me, okay. I'm essentially a designer. I'm based in the UK, quite remotely in the UK. But my background is very much in the history of denim and its design. And my more recent work, having worked at Patagonia for 3.5 years, is very much in sustainability and problem solving and finding better ways of manufacturing clothing, designing and manufacturing clothing. And that's where I'm up to at the moment. Do you want me to talk about my experiences as well, or do you want to do that later?
No, you can just give us a brief background about your experience. Yeah, it's fine.
Well, going into the better experiences that I've had generally is kind of like working with companies that are really open to trying to do things a bit differently and looking for kind of, giving you kind of responsibility and giving you kind of like the freedom to be able to explore within their organization of how you can do things better. Those are the best companies that I've worked with. They're always kind of, up for the challenge and giving me all the support that I've needed. And yeah, I've had a really amazing freelance experience, but my circumstances for living remotely is that I'm married to somebody that needs absolute silence for what they do for a living. So I don't want to live in the cities, and I don't want to go and work full time for anybody, especially. And this suits me. This is great.
Good, thank you. Salli, can you give us your background?
I don't know, but I want to live where Miles is living. It sounds lovely. I'm based in South London, so Bromley to be precise. I've been freelance for about 20 years, nearly my anniversary. I originally worked for Wrangler and Lee through the 90s and a couple of other brands, and had twins in 2000, so I didn't have a lot of choice. I had to really adapt my lifestyle to suit managing the girls, which I did. And yeah, I was really lucky. Companies rang me up and asked me to start doing projects for them, some small, some big. In 2003, I got the opportunity to work again for Wrangler through the connections there, and Aidan O'Mara, who was the VP at the time, who used to be the MD, asked me to connect with Arvind, and I ended up being a consultant for Wrangler when they started in India, which was a great experience. But I've worked with mainly the high street, so I've worked with everybody from Topshop, Fat Face, even Tesco's, M&S. I've worked at the volume end of the market, and I tend to go into companies for, usually ends up being 2 or 3 years, sometimes longer. Evaluate all their product, look at the way they're developing things, engage with the teams and the manufacturers, find better ways of doing things. I do everything from fibre, work with the mills, right the way through to laundry. I love the laundry side, and I tend to find that's the skill set that's really missing in the businesses. They have less knowledge because, again, the buyers and the people I work with don't get to the factories as much as probably I have done in my experience. So for me, everything I learned in the factories and everything I learned when I was younger, I take to these companies, share that experience, and take the teams on a journey so everybody upskills, and hopefully we deliver a lot of really good value to the business and margin and profit, which is important. Over the last few years, I've really been focused on sustainability because we've all been on this journey, and it's a personal responsibility for me to do this as well. So where I can make the choices, I direct the companies. And in the last few years, I've found myself training a lot of people, a lot more than ever before. And I run a very basic module to help people upskill and make the right choices very, very quickly. So yeah, I love what I do. I'm very lucky to do it, and I've worked with some great clients. So yeah, we're a good community.
Thank you. Mohsin, can you give us your backstory?
Yeah, sure. I'm Mohsin. Hello. I've been freelancing for probably about 7 or 8 years. I've been a designer for 18, so I studied fashion, and I worked for some quite niche little smaller brands. I worked for a company called Okini at the beginning of my career, and that meant we're doing a lot of collaborations with like Levi's Japan and Edwin and loads of amazing companies, and got to see archives, and it was really amazing. But for the last 8-9 years, I've been doing a lot of work with mills. So as well as still running my own brand together with my wife Sadia, I've been consulting for mills and designing fabrics and doing really cool like developments. And at the same time, I've been teaching. So my goal actually now is, for the last 4 or 5 years, has been to become a professor of like denim and fashion, really. So that's been what I've been doing, and I've been teaching on and off for more than 15 years as well. So, and that's led to me doing a lot of work with the Transformers Foundation and being actively involved in their Transformers events. So that's what I've been really doing. But the work with mills has been the exciting thing, because I get to work on developments that not even other designers have seen yet. So I get to work on the top end of it all, which has been really fun. And then doing collections that inspire other teams, which has been really quite inspiring to do, and not worrying about making money or sales figures or anything like that, which is what I now realize is something that I really enjoy a lot more. Having worked for really big companies where at the start of the season, they give you a PDF and they tell you the sell-throughs of what happened in the last 2 years, and you have to fit everything into a box. Now I'm not doing any of that, which I really enjoy. And I think that's the better. Now I'm producing work that I really enjoy, and more sustainable work as well. And sustainability has pretty much given more new life to everything that I've been doing in the last 3 or 4 years, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. But yeah.
So you're based in the UK?
I'm based in the UK. I'm based in West Sussex, so just very near Gatwick Airport, a very, very leafy area. And we used to be based in like London, and we made the move to leave London because we couldn't, even though we loved London, but when we left it, we realized how much we actually didn't like it. It's really funny how you meet people who live in cities and it's all about the city, but actually being surrounded by nature, a bit like what Miles is saying, it very, very much like resonates with me, like being around nature and greenery and not hearing sirens or cars or anything is the best thing in the world. And I decided to live in this area because pre-COVID, I was traveling, me and my wife were both traveling quite a lot. So every month we would travel to Pakistan or Hong Kong or wherever it is for inspiration, or to visit factories. So that's a lot of my work is doing that.
Okay, thanks. And Laura, what's your story?
So my story, I'm based in Antwerp in Belgium. I've been freelance for about 3 years now. Before that, I was working for Wrangler and Pepe Jeans. Yeah, I guess my kind of area of specialism is the product development part. So really turning from a sketch all the way to having a final product, working a lot, as Salli said as well, on the sustainability side of product development. But yeah, I kind of do the whole A to Z. So from range building a brand, all the way through to following through production. And as a consultant, I have worked all over the place. I initially went freelance because I accidentally started my own brand, and I thought I would be able to balance a little bit more and have a little bit more time to work on my own brand. But the reality is that that never really happened, because yeah, I ended up traveling a lot for the denim job. I worked on a catwalk collection for New York Fashion Week, doing the whole design, development and production of that. I've worked with garment factories in Bangladesh. I've worked with a big UK high street retailer. So yeah, really very different types of experience as a freelance consultant.
You'll have to let me know how you accidentally start a brand when I see you. And
Denim locations.
Claire, can you tell us your story, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Claire. I'm based in North London. And I actually only started my consultancy, I think it was about 18 months ago, but that was after having 12 years in the industry, working at retailers in the UK, Next, All Saints, Reese. And I left full-time 18 months ago and met Outland. So now my clients are based in Australia. I work with Outland, UK. I do trend forecasting in denim for Trendstop, and I work with Cambodia and also Turkish factories. I've previously worked with a lot of other countries as well. I've been to Bangladesh, India, Portugal, China, Hong Kong, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. So I think that's the amazing thing about kind of coming into consultancy, is about working with so many amazing different brands and people and cultures as well.
Great, thank you. Sinem?
Hi,
Hi.
everyone. I am based in Istanbul, Turkey, and I've been freelance for over 4 years, it's been. And I set up my own platform, BluProjects, right after I left my very long corporate experience, which was in Orta, in fabric mill. And there my role was from product to sales, but after that I wanted to focus only on sustainability area as a facilitator on sourcing or project developer. So my role is now, how I define, is more like a change agent, just as you define that way. And I try to help support brands and sourcing companies, from mill to garment makers or even chemical companies, to find better ways to produce and create positive impact on environment and also human. And I also design lectures and seminars or some trainings for corporations and fashion schools globally. Some of them are also volunteer projects, because I really believe to transform experience into the new generation. So that's also a part of my role in BluProjects.
Okay, thank you. And Michelle, what's your backstory?
I'm Michelle. I'm in Jersey City, which is right outside of Manhattan. I have been around for a minute. I started my company in 2007, and Genealogia became my first client. So I moved to Spain, and Genealogia is a technology-based company for those who don't know them. And I was creative director for them for a long time. I still count them as friends, family, and clients. That's another thing. I've been very lucky to work with companies that that understand responsibility, understand where we need to go, and are willing to take the risks to get there. LENZing has been one of those, actually. I we're going to get to the favorites and the worst later on, but I have to say that I'm super proud to have been one of the creators of Carved in Blue, and I'm so proud to see where you guys have taken this. So thumbs up, little side note. Anyway, I've worked in companies all along brands and supply chains. I've been in retail at Express. I was on the buying team for Denim there. I was the men's merchandiser for Silvertab, men's jeans at Levi's. I've worked for several mills, Arvin, Swift, Galen Lord,
Global.
Denim, huh? Sorry?
Global
Yeah, I
Denim.
would say Global Denim. So I've worked in every aspect except chemical companies and cotton farmers. I've covered the gamut, and in lots of different countries. Even trend presentations. I did trend tasting for PV for a couple of seasons. Just everything from fiber through to actually creating advertising. So we are a full service shop.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Amy.
Yeah, hi, I'm based in London as well, and like some of the other guys, I specialize in design and production of denim, and really focused in the last couple of years, as I think we all have been for all the right reasons, and denim kind of being at the forefront of this in fashion. I've been focusing on more sustainable practices for the brands that I consult for, kind of bringing them, you know, into better washing, better fabrics, and really concentrating in moving now into more circular processes. So really thinking about kind of moving production away from this like linear approach that we've kind of got really used to, which is actually, you know, it's a modern kind of phenomenon and something that we all kind of find, I'm sure, not sustainable. And like a lot of people, that's kind of the work's taken me around the world, from Europe to Pakistan to Turkey, China, Sri Lanka. And that's definitely been kind of a positive and highlight, I think, of being in the denim industry, as you get to see so much of the world. And I really went freelance because at the time, I had just had my first child, and it was about 9 years ago now. And the brand I was working for at the time was quite demanding, and it just didn't feel kind of sustainable to have a very small child and, you know, give the child what it needs and kind of look after myself, but also give, you know, work full time in that same way. So I went freelance at that point and kind of haven't looked back really. It's been not without its ups and downs, but it's definitely overall enabled me to kind of, you know, be there for my family, but also to kind of get different experience and work for a few different brands.
So that's a good lead in. The term ups and downs is a good lead in to the first question, and that is, what are some of the challenges that you encounter as consultants? And so we'll start with Mohsin. Can you?
Wow. Oh, thank you so much, Michael.
We only have an hour, Mohsin. Okay.
I know. I'll try and summarize. What are the challenges? I think some of the challenges that I'm sure all of us have faced is not being paid on time is one of them. Companies taking their time with it, like asking the work in advance, and then when it comes to the payment, it's a completely separate team, or, you know, they're not talking. So yeah, the people that tend to hire us obviously understand what we all do, and they understand, okay, we'll get this guy in, or we'll get this team in, and we'll get the job done in a certain amount of time, and they'll deliver. But then the companies don't deliver most of the time. And I felt that a lot more during this COVID period, but also throughout my career as well.
Yes, I'm going to say, well, let's just leave it there. I mean, I'll bring you in a bit later. Miles?
It's my experiences have varied quite a lot, because I worked freelance for a lot of my time at Levi's, and I was with Levi's for many years. So that was quite all-consuming. But then I've had other experiences working on sort of quite small kind of energy kind of projects with different companies, and that's been like really fantastic to kind of be able to You know, like Amy said, you know, you have different experiences with different companies. It's always really exciting to do it like that way. But, you know, you just have to really try and get expectations out in the open quite early on when you're working with any company. So, I mean, I have had lots of different experiences and good and bad, like everyone said. But I mean, on the whole, there is something about the buzz of this that keeps me going and keeps me engaged with it. And every time you go to a different company, it's always going to be a different set of ground rules. So you have to kind of like work out how you're going to engage with them. Your communication has to be absolutely perfect. You have to kind of know who your point of contacts are, and you know, really make sure that you've got all that support there to do the job that you know you can do for the company, and just make sure that they know exactly what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and all that kind of thing, so it actually works for you, for everybody.
So Claire, you're relatively new as a consultant.
Yeah.
What have been the challenges for you?
I think work timings. When you're a consultant, I don't think you're a 9 to 5 worker anymore. I mean, definitely I find working with Australia, I think it's 9 a.m. is midnight our time. And so a lot of my meetings actually start at 6 a.m. in the morning. I'll speak to Australia, and then I'll go on to speak in Cambodia later. And then I'll start with my UK clients later in the day. So I would definitely say that's my biggest challenge, is kind of, I don't think you ever turn off. And when you become a consultant, you're working constantly, and you can't switch off at 5 o'clock anymore. But, you know, that's part of working with amazing clients, is that you don't really feel that you have to.
Michelle, do you think it really matters where you're based in the world?
Now, no. So long as there's an airport near you. No. In the past, so long as there's an airport near you. But now, so many things can be done virtually. I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, but there's been, we've wasted a lot of energy, both literally and figuratively, on some of the approval processes and putting things into work, and even just having meetings. I mean, I think that I've been working from my home office since 2011. So I think that it's fine. What we're moving to is the better way. It's the better way.
Yeah. So Sinem, you, unlike most of the other people, you came from working full-time from a denim mill. So what is your particular view on the challenges you faced?
I used to define myself as a very busy person because I was handling sales, and means a lot of traveling, and I was always working like in the evenings. But freelancing is even busier, or it's challenging, because you offer yourself in the core of all of the projects. And I work alone, as most of us, and don't having any team helping you is a huge challenge. And the clients, they expect from me to be flexible and to feel exclusive all the time. So it means like you need to handle a couple of projects, but at the same time feel them like a still corporate team person. So that's the challenge. And I find myself traveling each and every week pre-COVID times, and working in the evening. So and also because I enjoy what I do, you don't even realize that you're tired. So these are, ups and downs.
So Laura, what is your preference in the sense that do you like short-term contracts, or do you like something more long-term so you have some stability?
Oh, that's a difficult one, actually. In a way, I like the short-term contracts because I can go in and solve a problem and get a job done. And that then also gives me a little bit more free time afterwards to work on my own thing as well. So I try and juggle things in that way, where I work on a contract for a short amount of time and then I free myself up for my own brand for a little period of time. But at the same time, having the longer term contracts also does offer a bit more stability. And if you can do a role where you have a longer term contract, but you're maybe only working for that brand or retailer or whoever it is for 2 days a week, and you can do something else the other 3 days a week, for example, that's also a way that you can balance it. So for me, it kind of really depends on what the project is and who the client is, what the brand is that I'm working with, as to, because obviously in our industry, we're also not turning product around necessarily very quickly. So it can be a little bit frustrating if you go in and do a part of the product, but you never see the end of that product through. So yeah, both options have pros and cons, I think. In a way, I think I prefer the project-based one, just because that gives me a little bit more flexibility, but I don't say no to longer-term projects either, if it's the right thing.
And Amy, this idea of exclusivity, I mean, if you're only getting short-term contracts and more than one of those companies are expecting exclusivity, how do you go about balancing that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that is the real challenge, is to juggle everyone's expectations and to juggle the workload. And, you know, it's kind of like having 3 bosses sometimes, rather than just the one boss to keep happy. And, you know, when you've also kind of got that and family and, you know, everyone else's expectations on you, sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming. I think I've always tried to keep my clients quite different, that I've got at the same time. So like I might have a slightly kind of high street client, then someone maybe, you know, based more in Europe, so have a different kind of feel to it, or someone who's kind of more on the higher end scale. So, and, you know, or kind of a younger brand versus a slightly older brand, so that in my head, I can kind of separate them out, and I find that easier. I definitely think it's trickier if your clients are quite similar, that you have at the same time. And I think then, you know, they do feel a little bit more uncomfortable with it. So I've always tried to have quite different kind of feeling clients working at the same time. And that definitely helps me to design for them and to kind of compartmentalize what I'm doing for them. But I think it also helps them feel like, you know, one client isn't getting the kind of better of you for that, you know, particular look or thing.
Okay, and Salli, you've had a long consultant career. Have you ever taken anything on knowing that actually you really don't know how to do the job or what the answer is going to be, and you're going to work it out anyway?
Kind of. I've never taken anything on not knowing where to find the answers, let's put it that way. I think everything we do, our job is a challenge, and I love it because it is a challenge. And the big part of me is, if I don't know the solution, I go and find it. So when I have found myself in a situation, say in a laundry, and I don't understand why the chemical's not performing, I'll ring the chemical company, get them to teach me about it, so I learn. So I think that's what we are. I think the reason we love this job is because it is constant learning and constant evolving. And, you know, ultimately we are a business, and we have to be agile to suit the needs of every customer is different. So what I was doing at one company like ASOS, like working on the laundry, the process to reduce our water and to reduce, eliminate pumice, all the things we needed to do in that process to have a sustainable process in laundry. Yeah, at somewhere like M&S, I was working with the mills on engineering the fabrics right, working with the pattern team, you know, working with the suppliers. I think I spent about 9 weeks in Bangladesh the other year, just in the factories, trying to find solutions and trying to solve problems. So it always ends up being bigger than you think it's going to be, and you will always face challenges as you go. But the answers are there. We're such a good industry, and the denim community is so supportive. So if you ring up Alice at Tornello, she'll let you go over and learn the machine. Or if you ring up somebody at one of the mills, they will help you with your shrinkages and how you can adjust things and how you can improve it. So I think we are a business that, or an industry that does like enable solutions very, very easily. And that's what we do as freelancers. Our job is to bring the expertise and all our contacts into a business and enable everybody to go on that journey and make their products better. I think you said about challenges in the business. I think sometimes, for me, being very honest, I think sometimes you go in a business and people are quite intimidated about you, and you face some resistance sometimes in companies, which is hard. So you have to share your knowledge as much as you can, and you have to take everybody on the journey. And that way everybody gets the end goal and we achieve better product. I'm very proud when we have a success story and we've done something better for the industry, you know, as well as the client. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So no doubt the pandemic has had a huge impact on our industry. So I'd like to ask you, how does it feel being a freelancer in these uncertain times, and how do you see the future role of freelancers or consultants? Do you think that consultants will be more important going forward? And that is for Miles.
Okay, well, I would say, as we're at the point of having to do some major resetting in this industry anyway, with the broad amount of experiences that we've all got on this panel, and you know, anybody that's, you know, working in this industry as a freelancer, it's kind of vital for companies maybe to reach out to some of us to get all of our knowledge in to help with the reset, because that, you know, I think without it and just going back to the dreaded normal, it's just not gonna work long term, because that just isn't sustainable. So I think with all the work that we've individually been doing on sustainability, and knowing the whole process from, you know, conception all the way through to production, it will, as a kind of just a burst of energy into a company, just give so much knowledge and strength to any brand or company or mill or laundry or wherever we might work. But I think that's perhaps what companies are looking for at the moment.
Mohsin, I know that you've lost clients at this time. Are you still optimistic about the future?
I think so. For me, I've always had a number of clients at the same time, so that's never really relied on one. So you know, I'm in a lucky situation where I do have a client that I've been working, you know, for a couple of years, and then I've got some that come in for small projects, or they very cheekily, you know, we go into our agreement knowing that it's only going to be for a month or 6 weeks or one video or whatever it is, and I'm quite okay with that now. And a lot of companies think very short term, I find. So, and that's even before COVID, even now, it's like, you know, I was speaking to one of them recently going, look, I know October seems far away to you, but we should start working on that project now. So then by September we've done, and we can do all the marketing and we can do a better job for you, rather than you calling me up 2 weeks before the deadline, or even 1 week before the deadline going, do you mind helping me? It's like, it just puts more pressure. But no, I think I'm optimistic. But I think it's just, a lot of people just need to think less short term really, and think a bit more bigger. And as Miles said, that this is the best time to be, we're all available, we're all easily, we can come onto meetings quite quickly and have a Zoom call and discuss ideas. So this is the best time to be speaking to a consultant or a freelancer and getting their opinion, but making sure you pay them for their opinion as well. That's what I find. There's a lot of pre-meetings about meetings going, do you mind sharing me what concepts you're thinking about for us? And then we can think about it. And I was like, ooh. So it's a fine line. I'm finding a lot of people are being very cheeky as well at the moment. But it's just the cutting through that and being quite strong about who you are and believing in yourself, and not having to prove yourself. Like now I was speaking to my wife and I went, I don't want to prove myself anymore. From the jobs that we've been doing for the last 18 years, they should be able to know if they want to hire us or not. And a lot of people are quite cheeky. They sometimes ask us to still do a free little mood board for them, or give them ideas. And I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's very strict, but now I'm banging the hard ball. But that's me. But I'm optimistic. Everyone's been quite nice. And I think I heard Miles on another talk saying that some clients are very much flexible, going, take your time with the project and spend a bit more energy on it. And I think so. There's been a lot of that as well, even I'm doing a project with you, Michael, and you've been very relaxed about it, going, take your time, and that's cool. That's nice, really, rather than rush it out.
That's me.
Yeah, that's you. That's you. Yeah, but the other clients aren't like that. They want everything yesterday. So no, I don't know if I'll answer your question or not.
No, that's fine. And Michelle, I mean, the US is in the news for all the wrong reasons in terms of COVID today. How are you seeing the impact in the US, and how are you seeing the impact on what you do in the US?
Well, you're right. We just, for the first time in 10 weeks, my state, the contraction rate has risen above 1. So it's a little nerve-wracking. But I think on the other side of this, being a consultant is going to benefit our clients or potential clients, because to navigate through whatever the new normal is going to be, you need someone who has a broad perspective, who has worked in lots of different areas and know how those areas connect, so that they can give you kind of a roadmap for moving forward. And I think that if you have someone inside your company that's kind of narrow and deep, you need a perspective that's broader. And I think that's what all of us bring to the table. Not to mention that as consultants, and you guys disagree if you feel it, but we have all had to do more with less. We have to accomplish big things with sometimes limited resources, which makes us problem solvers. Well, we're all in a big problem right now. So you need people who know the industry, know the components of the industry and how they work together to enable us to move ahead. So I'm optimistic. That's a long way of saying I'm optimistic.
And Amy, the same question really. How has this been an uncertain time for you? Have you managed to keep hold of clients, and how do you see the role going forward?
I mean, it's been an uncertain time for everyone, but I think when I, for example, I was very unwell 2 years ago, and that was a really uncertain time, and that was scarier because I was on my own in that situation. But I guess it's been tough, but it's kind of been tough for everyone. I've been lucky; some projects were put on hold, but I kept my 2 main clients. With reduced days for a couple of months, but it's kind of all getting back to normal. And they were really supportive, and they're kind of good clients, and they get a lot from me because they give a lot back. But I think moving forward, I think at this time people do and brands do need to start thinking out of the box a bit more, right? Like Michelle was saying, and I think these are unusual times, and I think we all feel, certainly everyone I speak to, we feel even stronger that the work that we were doing pre this on sustainability and better practices is more important than ever. And like overwhelming from all the webinars I've been tapping into, and from kind of, Instagram and speaking to my denim community, that work is more important than ever. And so, all of us who have been working towards that, and who have been teaching ourselves and educating ourselves and helping to kind of move our industries and who we work for in those ways, that is just going to be more important. And, we can see the backlash happening now with companies like Boohoo, who've been called out for, using facilities in Leicester, which have not been paying living wages. So I think the freelancers will bring to that is their expertise, and I think thinking out of the box. I think it helps sometimes that we're not always in the company politics. We can kind of be beyond that, and we can have a bit of a bird's eye view of things. And we need to be pushing for these brands who don't have that knowledge in denim, especially on how to keep working towards better practices, being less impactful on our environment. And that is the way, that's the future, that's the way forward.
Well, thank you, Amy. That's a nice lead into the next question. So a lot of you have talked about a lot of different roles that you actually do within your work, in terms of design, in terms of product development, in terms of sourcing even. And I suppose the latest thing on the block is sustainability. And what I find with sustainability is either you have people who have studied it and know it in depth, but don't actually know textiles, so there's a disconnect. Or you have other companies where, you know, somebody was color management on a Friday and sustainability on a Monday, and is, you know, are they waving or are they drowning? And I think that you guys can play a key role in that area because you're bringing in both those skills. So going forward, do you think the emphasis will still be on your traditional skills in design, etc., or are you seeing that sustainability will become more encompassing? And so I'll go to Salli to start with that one.
Hi, I'm like you, Michael. I think education is key. To give you an example to explain this a little bit, about 2 or 3 years ago, I did a training for lensing with Begonia from Genealogia and Helen from Lycra, and we did a presentation and a training on sustainability in a really premium British brand. And we went through all the new processes they can do, everything from fibre, working with TENCEL, etc., through the wash process. When we got to the wash process, I have a slide that basically says these 16 processes are now done in 5. And the 25 people from that brand in the room actually asked me to go back to the traditional slide and asked me to explain all the processes. So I find myself at the moment with the companies I work with, I'm educating on how we did it as much as I'm educating where we're going, because if you don't know where you came from, you don't know how to change it. So whenever I do trainings, I go through all the traditional processes and then what we do now. So it's going to be difficult. I mean, the companies I work with some incredible buyers and incredible people, but a lot of people are multi-product these days. Businesses have reduced the amount of people running the department. So I often find I'm working with a buyer who's doing casual bottoms as well as denim. So they can't be expected to have all that skill set. So your job is to go in there and work with the techs, with the buyers, with the assistant buyers. I love training the trainees in the company as well. I usually get them to do wash comments with me, so they're learning for the future because they are our future. So our job is to upskill every part of the chain, and, you know, spending time in factories. When I started, I was so lucky to have my arse kicked up in Wrangler. I had to make jeans before I was allowed to design them. So I learned all the processes. And I think that's something that our universities and colleges, if they can get into a factory and get into that resource, they have to start learning those skills again to understand how you can design well and design better. And I think sustainability is all about this knowledge. We can't improve it unless you actually understand the problem in the first place. So I hope that's a big benefit we will bring. And through lockdown, I've been asked to train more companies. I've been doing short trainings, just an afternoon, but we have to, I think they're on the journey now, and we have to support them as the businesses move ahead.
So Laurie, you've got a broad base of clients. Where does sustainability sit within there? Is it becoming more important, or is it people paying lip service, really?
Quite an interesting one, actually. Like, for me, it has to be a must these days. Not everybody is perfect yet. Not everybody knows exactly what sustainability means, but I think as a brand or a retailer, you need to be open to the idea. And I think us as consultants, we can also go in and say, okay, if you want to do some sustainability, you can do fiber, you can do wash, you can do this. We can give them all the different points that they can work on, but we can also work with them to say, like, maybe this is the area that you should tackle first. Maybe you should consider first what fabric you're using. And then when we have this down and when we've got this sorted, we can move on to the next area. So we can really work as consultants to, as Salli said, educate the buyers that we're working with, educate the merchandisers, and find a way for them to take a path that's best suited to them. And as we're coming with an outsider point of view, we're not bogged down with, well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is the way we do things in this company, so we have to first ask that person, it has to be approved by all these people. we can find a kind of outside way of going about it. So I think that's a very important thing for us as consultants, to indeed educate the people inside the companies that we're working with. For me, those companies have to be really, really open to it. They're either doing it already or open to changing and improving the ways that they're working. It's not always the way right now, but for me, that is a big decider on whether I would work with a client or not. Interestingly, about a month and a half ago, I had a call from a guy who has a brand. It's already been going for a few years and he's at the scale up stage. So he's producing a collection 2-3 times a year, producing a few thousand pieces of each jean. He's also doing some sweatshirts, t-shirts, a small brand. He's ready to scale up. He found me, he contacted me, he was asking for help on everything from design to product development to production. I was talking him through what he's already doing, where he's producing, what his supply chain is. He was pretty standard, buying samples, taking them to a factory in China that he was working with, getting them copied in the laundry there. So I challenged him a little bit. I asked him, like, are you practicing sustainable practices? Are you working, like, do you know where your fabric is coming from, or are you letting the factory just buy that? Do you know what they're doing in the laundry? When you give them a pair of jeans, do you know what they're doing with it? And he really knew nothing. He admitted that he knew nothing. He didn't even really know what sustainability meant. So I asked him, are you open to that? Are you open to looking at your processes, how you're working right now, and finding a better way to do them? And he just wasn't interested. He wasn't interested. He didn't want to hear about how bad the industry has been and how good it could be. Like, he really wasn't interested. So for me, that was an absolute no-brainer. I'm not interested in working with him. For me, he has to be open to checking out his practices, making sure he knows every single part of his supply chain, making sure he knows that his workers are being paid well, because it's not just environmental impact, it's also social impact. And as a startup brand, you have a much better opportunity to be able to do that than a big brand, because you're not part of a huge amount of people that person number 1 does that little bit and person number 5 does that little bit. You're one person or a small team of people who do the whole process. So you should have a very clear understanding of your whole supply chain. So for me, whether it's a startup or it's a big retailer that I'm working with, they have to be open to sustainability on some level, and they have to be open to working to better their practices no matter where they are. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Claire, do you see that sustainability is an opportunity for you in this area? And how easy is it to keep abreast of sustainability? Because I think what people don't really necessarily understand that there is a time factor to sustainability, in the sense that what was true 5 years ago is not necessarily true today or even 1 year ago. So it's a complex area as well.
Definitely. I mean, I still think as a consultant, my roles are still very much sourcing, design and product development, like you first said. But now it's kind of incorporating sustainability into each one of those. So sustainability into your design, sustainability into your product development, and also into your sourcing. As a consultant, as Salli said, you just constantly need to upskill every part of that and keep on top of everything that's coming through with sustainability. And it's constantly changing, every single month, every year. When I started, I did the Carrying Sustainability course, which I thought was a great one, just to kind of, for people starting out in the industry who want to get their head round what it's about. I mean, I was already working with Outland at this point, so it was just confirming a lot of all the things that I was learning very quickly. I mean, I would say that in the last 18 months, it's the most I've learned in all of my career, is just having an amazing community to kind of go back to, speaking to all the designers here. And then also, all of the parts of designing, they all offer different courses. Like, I've started the genealogia course, so you get to learn how to actually design laser patterns, so you can offer that as well to your clients. So yeah, I think you just have to keep ahead of the game, learn constantly, and just do as many courses, ask questions. You know, everyone's very open to educating you. Like you, I learned so much from watching you, and the Transformers aired about cotton that just blew my mind within, you know, and that was last year. So I think you just have to constantly educate yourself, and you do that as a consultant because you do want to stay ahead of the game and offer the best service you can.
And Sinem, you've really targeted this area for the services you offer. Can you tell us about yourself in this sustainability circle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I defined the whole services actually on this area from the beginning. That was the times where this topic was not this popular, and it was actually a tough decision because it's kind of narrowed down some of the potential projects. But by time, as we all experienced, it became a very popular thing. But then I experienced lots of offers asking my support for sustainability or strategical road mapping. But most of them was actually, in a way, still traditional, just using it for reaching another sales success. So I think we all have to be very careful when it comes to this topic, because we are unfortunately in a world with lots of greenwashing, and it needs some careful filtration to understand what the client actually want from me. Is it really something, a positive impact, to create a positive impact for, do they really care nature or human, or is it like using this as a tool? So this is, in a way, I find it still a very kind of traditional way, which is actually not working. It's an old system which we now, most of us are talking resetting. I'm very happy that we are talking about it finally in a way that it's really like a transformation. And then another point that I believe, being a freelancer and dealing with sustainability is a good combination for all of us in different areas, because being neutral, not representing any particular company, means that you can question in a free environment. It's then you can really drive the change in the best way. So that's why I think for this particular topic, either as a designer or a sourcing expert or product expert, so it's very important, and it really matters to have another eye, just like from a different perspective, telling you, asking you questions, as long as the client is open to have and learn something from us.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go into the final session now. I've got 3 questions for you. One, can you give us an example of one of the best experiences you've had as a freelancer? 2, maybe you could give us a flavor of, let's call it a bad experience, or even a humorous or funny experience. And also, can you give us one piece of advice for anybody thinking about starting to be a freelancer? So, Mohsin, I'll let you first.
I guess the one of the best things is probably working for a client that really values you, is really, and they value your opinion. You know, where they ring you up or they call you up and they go, we really want to hear your thoughts on this, and you know, your specialist. Well, they some smoke blowing up. You know, it's quite nice when, and also when someone values your opinion, it's really quite cool. And obviously the money stuff as well, getting paid in advance is unbelievable. Sometimes it's very rare that it happens. Bad stuff, it's probably when they take the mickey and they change their contract, or they change the brief, or they give you outline the project. Let's just say it's a project you're doing, And then near the end of the project, they keep on adding in more things, and they think, oh, you can do that as well, or you can do that as well. And you're like, oh, actually, that's another week's work, you know, or it's going to take more time for it. So there's a lot of cheekiness that people do with freelancers, but you know, as one of the other panelists said, one of my colleagues said that, you know, we go the extra mile. You know, if it's a project and we want it to be successful, we'll do the extra hours. We won't add those hours up. You know, if I invoice for every hour that I worked, and most of the guys know that I end up working very late. I even joke that I work on like LA time or like New York time a lot of the time. It's the absolute truth. You know, they're always surprised when I'm emailing them at 2 in the morning going, why are you still working? I said, only because tomorrow is a new day and I'll get loads more emails. So it's better that I just finish the stuff that I can do physically. But advice.
And your advice?
My advice, sorry, I'll end now. My advice would be to sort of lawyer up. If you've got friends that are solicitors or lawyers, getting a draft agreement made. So if you are a freelancer, most of the time you go into a golden handshake or you just agree to do the work, and sometimes you would sign an agreement. Having your own agreement, even if it's just on one page and it says your terms, it says that, you know, I want to be paid this much in advance, or I want to be paid, you know, 30-30, whatever it is, the agreement of the term, and making sure that, you know, making sure you have something written down and it's signed on your terms. Because a lot of the clients I have, they're not in the UK, they're in Pakistan or Bangladesh or even in Hong Kong, and they smile when they know they've got one up on you and they don't have to pay you in time or anything. So lawyer up is what I say. But yeah.
Lawyer up. Amy, what about you?
I mean, yeah, I think we've all had some experiences of clients who have been slow to pay, or and that, you know, it's a sad thing because you kind of feel like you've done the work, and it makes you feel undervalued, and it raises kind of tough questions, and you do have to really be really firm. And like Mohsin said, sometimes it's better if you can get someone else to help you kind of chase the money or do the invoicing. Because when you're trying to work for them as well, you know, still deliver, but also chase them for money, it can get difficult for you, and it just doesn't end up being a pleasant experience. But also, it ends up that you don't want to kind of go above and beyond for them, which is what we all do. Like for the clients that treat us well and really value us and, you know, raise us up as well, then I will totally go the extra mile. But as soon as kind of payments start coming in late and you're chasing invoices and, you know, it slipped 2 weeks and then it slips a month, you're just not so inclined to kind of do that. So definitely good invoicing, chasing invoicing, you know, being really clear what your payment terms are is my advice to anyone starting up. I'd also say be nice to everyone you can, and kind of positive force when you're coming into an office, and try and be just, you know, a pleasure to work with, because I think that's what kind of keeps you employed and gets people to bring you back onto projects. Those are my kind of 2 biggest pieces of advice I would give. And when I started 8 years ago, I mean, I knew no one else who was a freelancer. I felt very alone. And, you know, this is a growing community, and we have a support group. I mean, literally, we have a support group. We text each other, we ask each other questions. You know, it's a truly kind of wonderful thing that is, you know, that I wish I had 8 years ago. And there are people who are in your situation who have had some tough lessons already and who you can ask advice from. And I think that's really important. And we have talked, I know one of the questions that has come in is, you know, should we get a union? And that's exactly the kind of questions that we've had during this period, as I think we've all kind of taken a bit of time to assess who we want to work for, what kind of projects we want to be doing, and what kind of parameters we want to set moving forward. And we've definitely kind of, you know, talked about the strength in our numbers and the strength in kind of communicating to each other, knowing who particularly isn't a great payer or who's a bit trickier. And, you know, we've definitely talked about this kind of union, whether that's a possibility, because I think that would benefit like us, but also the clients.
Okay, Miles?
I have had some very funny experiences, and when I first started freelancing, I have to admit I was probably going into it a bit blind and kind-hearted and doing the handshakes and just thinking everything was all sorted. But I find often that when you go into companies, that the upper management that's employing you to do this job is not communicating directly to the people that you're actually going to be working with, what it is that this person that's coming from this other place is going to actually do. And I was going backwards and forwards in and out of this company and finding that the people that I had instructed every 3 weeks to do a job, when I'd come back to assess the work, it hadn't been done at all sometimes. So I'm standing sometimes around for a week waiting for this work to be caught up on, and it was an absolute nightmare on certain times. And I'd have to go back to the upper management and just say, yeah, it's happening, but it's happening much slower. Is there anything we can do to support this kind of work? But they just weren't talking to each other. So going back to that thing Amy was just saying then about communication and really kind of making sure that you are being very, very clear and organized with people. You have to also make sure that they're also talking to each other. And that thing I was saying before about raising and encouraging expectations, that I think is really important advice I would give. And just be super, super organized and be really, really clear on your payment terms. Don't just get caught up in this is how we like to pay people. It's like, this is how I work, this is how you pay me. Something at the beginning, maybe something in the middle and something at the end of this project, and put really clear proposals forward so that you've got then something like a checklist, something to follow for the project that you're doing. It's much better that way.
Laura, my hero or heroine is Judge Judy, and it's all about the contract. It's all about the four corners of this contract. Do you think this is key advice for somebody thinking to be a freelancer?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of clients maybe don't think that you should be writing the contract as the freelancer. They often want you to sign their contract. But as Miles said, they're your clients. They're paying you. They're paying you to do a job for them. So you need to go in there and tell them, this is how I work. This is how I want to be paid. And you need to sign my contract before I start working with you. For sure. For sure. So
and have you had any, can you share any feel-good moments in your freelancing days?
So the best moment for me freelance-wise is definitely watching a collection that I'd single-handedly designed and developed going down the catwalk at New York Fashion Week, for sure. The same project also has the funniest, I think, stories around it, because the team in New York would quite often call me on a Sunday evening at around like 8 o'clock European time and ask me if I could be in the office the next morning in New York to present some stuff to them. That happened on several occasions, even though they were very aware that I was on a different continent. So yeah, there's a lot of funny stories, but they're always balanced off with the good experiences as well. And in terms of advice of what I would give to anyone thinking of starting in a freelance career, go for it. But remember that around the actual jobs and the clients that you're doing and the creative part, there is also a lot of extra bits to running a business or being a consultant. You will spend a lot of time with your accountant. Get a good accountant. Every quarter, you will probably spend a week preparing paperwork for your accountant, but get a good one who can advise you well. Otherwise, you can lose a lot of money. And remember that you're being paid, but you will also have to pay tax on that money that you're being paid in like a year's time. So don't spend it all at once.
So Claire, you are probably out of the speakers here, you've had the shortest time. So maybe it's fresh in your memory, the learning curve you've been through. So what advice have you got to give?
I would definitely agree with everything that's been said so far, because when I first started my consultancy, I did do a project without a contract, and they kind of disappeared on me after they received the work. But lo and behold, 6 months later, their collection was very reminiscent of the work that I had provided. So yeah, that was definitely a learning curve. So I would definitely say that you should definitely, you know, get everything signed, have your outlines of what you, the way you want to work. So that was definitely, yeah, a learning curve and the sort of my bad experience. But that's the only one, luckily, that I've had. So I've had a lot of amazing experiences. I mean, the best experience that I've had is I went to Cambodia last year, and obviously working with Outland, I got to go to the girls' houses that were working in the factory, and they showed me the new house that they had built from working, and it was like knowing that you're helping that company sell more jeans, more product, and yet they can, you know, make an amazing living wage and build this new house. And I think they built a new well and a new toilet. So it was kind of seeing from what I was doing how it actually trickles down the line. And as we know, I think it's 98% of garment workers don't actually make a living wage. So to work with companies and seeing the transparency through that entire brand and knowing what, you know, everyone's doing is kind of making a better future. So that's definitely my best experience. And I would say any advice for a freelancer now is be proactive, have, you know, make relationships, be nice to everyone, as Amy said, and trust in your own decisions, accept criticism and learn from it, and that will help you grow as a designer.
Okay, thank you. And Michelle, where you are today, what advice would you give to your own self starting out? Now you've lived that experience.
Well, along the lines of everyone else, I would say protect yourself financially. Because even when you have a contract, sometimes that contract's not honored. But definitely if you don't have one, it won't be honored. So I would say protect yourself financially. Also, be clear about your terms. For example, oftentimes we need to buy samples, or we need to arrange travel, or we need to subcontract something to like a graphic designer. All of that stuff, if you trust your client, get them to pay for it directly. If you're a little bit shaky about that client, because we all take business in the beginning that maybe we wouldn't take later on, I would say build that into your pricing structure, just so that you're not out of cash when everything is said and done. I would also say that if your part of the business is one that trains people and puts processes and systems into place, understand that once that client gets good at it, when you see them starting to catch on, you need to start looking to replace that business, because pretty soon the things that you offer them, they can do internally. So you need to prepare in advance for that. So that's the advice I would give. One of my best experiences is I've had lots of rewarding experiences over the last few years. But I'd say for me, it's the little moments that turn into big things that make a difference. You know, when you have an idea and you have a client that trusts you and lets you go big, and you have a team, whether it's internally in that client or whether it's people that you engage, a team that's willing to go for it, you can create big things. And for me, that was the experience with Truth and Light at Gina Logia. I mean, we didn't know how we would convince the denim industry that laser production could actually produce a garment that someone would want to wear. And through that kind of trust and the ability to let me just fly, we created something that I know for sure has changed the world. And so that makes me happy, right? The other thing, though, on the flip side is a client. For example, I had a client in China who wanted to repackage themselves to sell in the Western market. So they needed everything. They needed a name, they needed a collection, they needed salespeople, they needed a company profile, they needed logos, they needed, and we had 3 months to do it because they wanted to launch it at Kingpins, New York. So they also needed save the dates, they needed hang tags, they needed all kinds of trim, booth signage, all of that. We turned heaven and earth to get it all done in 3 months, ready for the debut at Kingpins, and they changed their mind. Luckily, I got 50% up front, but they never paid another invoice after that. And they never sold anything into the Western market. They just changed their mind. And you can lawyer up, but if that client's in China, kind of hard to sue them. So you can only take as much precaution as you can to try and mitigate some of these things, but understand sometimes you do as much as you can and it still doesn't work. I know I don't want to end on a bummer. I should have done the bad one first and the good one after. I love what I do. I really, really, really love this industry. Believe me.
Yeah, no, I know. No, leave it up to me to end on a bummer.
It's more you than me, Michael, for sure.
Sinem, what about your views on these questions?
Yeah, my best experiences when I think is mainly the improvement is you can easily see it because you work you give it advice and then you can easily see the outcome, which is amazing. It really satisfies, and also on the other part, because I also work as a lecturer, it is such a huge satisfaction seeing somebody looking in your eyes when you are trying to teach something. So it's really one of my best experience teaching someone, young students or fashion designers, something which they are interested and they can use it in the professional life. And my bad experience or challenging times were mainly around uncertainties which we all experience. Even if we have some contract or some project, it doesn't mean that you have it next month. So of course what we choose as a road to being a freelancer or consultant means that you don't know anything at all, but still this is sometimes very tough to move, because sometimes you have 10 offers at the same time, but you have to say no, but after 2 months it's changing. So it's difficult to have a balance. And my advice would be for a new freelancer, be careful with your interviews, because most of the time they try to have your advice, experience during that interview or coffee chat or whatever it is. Sometimes it's lovely because we are a nice community, but sometimes it's unfair. So be careful with this interviews. That would be my advice. Of course, I totally agree with all these financial advices which you all mentioned, but that is so important. And I experienced in the beginning, I was talking and talking, but then I realized I am actually now consulting. So that is something they have to be careful with.
And I'll just tell you a short story about being careful with consultants. At a conference once, I went over to talk to somebody and asked them if they knew somebody else who I was searching for to get some, and the guy pointed across the room and said, "That's the guy." And then 1 week later, I get an invoice on my desk for £1,000 for introductory fee. So you buggers can't be just. Or maybe you should try that one. Anyway, Finally, Salli, have
Hello.
you, I'd be interested to hear your views on these questions.
Good experiences. I think I've had loads. I've been around a while, haven't I? Apart from drinking lots of beer, that's a good thing. But no, I got to talk at a conference in Dhaka in 2015, which was brilliant for me. I didn't actually know what to expect. It was with an NGO and working with PACT, the water people. But what it turned out to be was the Dutch government basically putting pressure on the Bangladesh government to loan money for sustainable equipment, like offer cheaper loans. And it was a really successful conference. But what happened to me was I met all the factories that came. There was about 150, and saw how genuinely most of them wanted to engage in this. And all the brands were there as well. At that conference, I think that's where I met Gina Luggi, I met Geordie and the guys who then started to train me. But it was such a good thing. And I was asked to speak as a product developer and like share what I saw as the opportunities for sustainable development with everybody in the room. And all the factories were just coming up going, it's great what you said, but how do we get the buyers interested? So I ended up like trying to give them all a bit of a guide of how to engage a buyer, because they were trying to sell to people who didn't really understand it at the time. So I was really proud of doing that. And I've supported those factories over the years since and worked with a lot of them. And it's been great to watch their journey to these amazing green factories that they have become and how committed they have been. Bad stories, apart from that horrible flight from Dhaka to Chittagong and going through a thunderstorm in a propeller plane, never again. It was horrific. I didn't think I was getting out with that one alive. And I did have a brandy at 10 o'clock in the morning when we landed, thank God. But I think knowing why I do this is so important to me. So back in about 2007, I used to go to China a lot, and we went to the back end of nowhere to a laundry. And I saw young people working in the factory. The factory stunk. All you could smell was resin. It was horrendous. As soon as you walked in, your eyes and your face was watering. And I was only in there for like a few minutes, but they were literally spraying the glue, making creases and slapping the iron on. These kids were just glue sniffing, and I just can't tell you the heartbreak. There was another laundry I saw on that trip as well. That was like a shed in somebody's back garden, with a couple of broken legs and PP, and they were doing kids wear in there because they said that the customer didn't want to pay the factory for kids wear because the prices had to be low, so they were subcontracting. And even the person I was with was horrified. So I think those things, I mean, we exited those factories, but understanding, I was asking for 3D resin, but I didn't know where it was made. So I think for me, it was a big like, man up, you need to know what you're asking for and what the consequences were. So that was a really big stepping stone on the journey for me to know, like, I've got to do this properly. I want to know where it's being done and how. So yeah, so my advice for freelancers starting in the industry is, you've got to love this job to do it. Believe you me, I did it because I needed flexibility in my life, but the amount of 3-4 a.m.s, like Mohsin said, you work on the times of your customers. So be prepared to take it on, be prepared to travel a lot as well. So you do give up your life when you're at Gatwick at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're getting home at midnight. But we love it. That's why we do it. We really do. And like Michelle says, you're a business. You've got to get a strong accountant. You've got to have, a good financial structure to your business. It is hard to get paid. I'm so embarrassed when I have to ask for money. I hate doing it. I want to be spending that time on making your business better and providing solutions, not chasing the accounts department. And often in big companies, it's not the people I'm working with that's the problem. They care. It's because it's such a complex financial system. So at the beginning, have that big conversation. Can I be set up as a supplier? Am I ready to go? Will you be able to pay? Can you give me a date every month, or roughly a date when I will be paid? Because no matter what, I have to pay VAT every quarter, even if somebody doesn't pay me. So that's a challenge. Make sure you've got a 3-month buffer in the bank if you can. It's not always possible. And expenses are also the challenge, because I find I'm having to pay for hotels and travel and getting that turned around. So most of the people I work for now, I say I want expenses back within a week to 10 days. And if you're strong, you can get it, but it is quite hard. But yeah, but be prepared for a really rocky ride if you're freelance. I've worked with some incredible clients though, and I've learned so much. And ultimately, I am who I am because those people challenge me to be better. And that's me. I just want to learn. I want to be the best at what I do. So, if you're going into freelancing and you love the industry, just go for it and be prepared to learn and listen.
Okay, thank you everyone. Mohsin, has anybody asked any questions?
There have been some questions. Let's see. I think one of them, Amy Roberton also covered, is about do we need to have an organization? So like which I think in our UK group especially, we have discussed it. There are freelancers unions available. Maybe it should be one regarding denim. We all have the same solicitor, or we all sign something, so we're part of this big collective. Maybe that could be something really quite strong and powerful. So I can say to a client, if you hire me, then you have to sign this other agreement, and you have to, otherwise we come after you. I don't know. It's quite scary, but maybe some kind of organization. Well, I think there's been some chatter as well. One guy's asking freelancers and designers, how often do you face situations where product you want to using premium sustainable fabrics, but the pricing limitations? How do you manage this? Yeah, it's like, champagne on orange juice, or it's the pricing structure is very strange. What clients expect for what you offer, I find. Yes, that's true. I think this is regarding fabric though. I think there's all of us are working on really amazing projects where we do have to make collections for hardly no budget, or at least have it so it's more accessible to the masses, which is quite an achievement in itself to do that. I think it's very hard.
That's, I think, an important part of being a consultant as well, is understanding your client, how much money they have to spend on a product, and tailoring what you do to fit the budget of that client in the best way you can do it.
Yeah, no, I just did a video for another client, and we got given the brief, I think 7 days before the deadline, and we did it. We managed to film their factory. We did it all. I made mood boards of exactly how they should shoot it, because obviously I can't travel there at the moment. So we storyboarded it out, and luckily enough, they followed it. They trusted us with it, which is a big thing. If a client trusts you and they say, okay, it's all on you, I mean, don't worry, we'll deliver. Just make sure you pay us on time and make sure you do these 5 things and we'll deliver it on time. Trust, I find, is a big thing.
There's something else too, Mohsin, that when you're developing a collection specifically, even if you use a more expensive fabric, which you probably shouldn't, there are other parts of the process that you can adjust to balance that out, and that just comes with experience.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah. I find also one more thing, Michelle, is like sometimes I work with fabric developers and they go, hey, we can't do that because it's too expensive. And I'm like, let's develop it anyway, because it will inspire the rest of the collection, and we can still develop that $2.50 fabric for so-and-so, but let's develop the fancy one first.
You can only get away with that once or twice, though.
Oh, no, I manage it a lot. So I try and do it every time, because it's really inspiring.
I mean, within the same collection, you can only do that once.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michelle's so right. I've worked with companies where the fabric has been more expensive, but because it's been treated in a certain way, it's laser friendly, the burn time comes down, you don't need to desize, you don't need to use stones, you've got an easy wash. So I've saved like 60 cents in laundry, so you can offset what you do. So it's like Michelle said, it's engineering that garment into your customer's price point and knowing every part of it to do it. I mean, these companies are on a journey. We're not going to get perfect circularity overnight, but we're getting closer and closer. But it's understanding all those choices to be able to engineer it still into a $12 price point or whatever the garment needs to be. So yeah, it can be done, and we would always try new things. So
consultants, we can see that complete process, whereas a lot of companies, it's one person deciding on a fabric, it's a different person making the design and a different person making the wash. But us as consultants, we're coming in and doing the whole part of it, so we can engineer the price accordingly, like Salli says.
Vertical. That's what we are, but yeah. No, I don't think there'll be any other questions, Michael. I think that's
okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. Hopefully it's been enlightening for the people listening. It's certainly been enlightening for me. Some great discussion. Just to wrap up, I would say that all the recent headlines during the pandemic have been about supply chain manufacturers experienced cancelled orders and cancelled contracts and non-payment of services rendered. And it would seem that some brands and retailers are ecumenical abusers in that they're not paying suppliers and now they're not paying freelancers. I think freelancers have been, the hidden victims in this area. By definition, like most people have said today, freelancers love the industry that they're in. However, they've got an equally big passion, is that they need to afford the rent and they need to afford to be able to eat. So despite freelancer having the word free in it, freelancers are not free. Freelancers are hardworking people, and they may be freelance, they may be denim product developers, but they're also their own receptionists, personal assistants, new business directors, HR managers, and their own account executives. So they answer their own phones, they manage their own diaries, source new business, support themselves on a professional and personal basis, and they create, send, and chase invoices. Consultants provide a significant amount of value for organizations. They can help them to develop strategies and manage projects. And since consultants are not committed to single companies, they bring experience from a much wider area of other industries and other companies, which allows them to offer creative solutions and then enables them to make innovative thinking. They can provide objective viewpoints, which allows for more diverse ideas than could be provided by the employees themselves within the organization. Hiring a consultant allows companies the ability to pay only for the services they need, rather than investing in expensive technologies or paying staff on hand that may not be needed. The cost of it involved in hiring consultants are also scalable, so the firm is able to track costs and thus allow firms to analyze the value provided by consultants. Finally, when the company no longer needs the consultant services, the relationship is easily terminated. So that is where I'm going to terminate this webinar. Hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.